Aloha and welcome. This is the third edition of Yakamashii. I'm Kathy Collins, and I'm so grateful to the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center for allowing me to do this bi-monthly talk story series. We've had master storyteller, Alton Chung. We've had my brother from another mother, Brian Cohn, who tells stories through film and music and so much more. And now we have my mother. It's my hero. Yaemi Yogi, born and raised on Maui. Mom will be 97 in another week or so. Born in Makawao. Mom's a proud Makawao hometown girl. So thank you for being my guest today, Mom.
Thank you for having me.
I've actually gotten to interview my mom a couple of times. We did the UHMC series, Preserving Our Recollections. Wow, maybe 20 years ago, when Daryl Owishi began that series. And you can actually see that. I think they've archived all of the interviews if you go to the UHMC or Google Preserving Our Recollections. And you can see us 20 years younger with old family photos and stuff. But today I thought this hour is going to go by really quickly, I know. And there were a couple of stories that I really wanted Mom to share. The first being because her name has been in the news lately, Patsy Takimoto Ming, our longtime congresswoman. My mom has the distinction of being Patsy Ming's first campaign manager. A lot of people don't know that, so I'm going to ask Mom to explain how that came about.
Yeah, well, Patsy was a year younger than me, and we were at Maui High School, and she ran for student body president, and there'd never been a female student president at Maui High. And so I know, yeah, we'll get her elected. we did. We did a lot of we had a committee of about 6 people, and one of the boys was a good artist, and he printed and we made cards with book for Patsy, and we handed it out to all the students. But the one thing I remember about the campaign, her mother, Patsy's mother, invited the committee, 6 of us, for lunch at her place. And at that time, the only way I had eaten spam was just sliced and fried, but Mrs. Takimoto baked it with brown sugar and and it was so no. That's one thing I remember about her campaign.
Tell them who Patsy's opponent was.
Oh, Elmer.
Elmer Groval, who later went on to be Speaker of the State House and, of course, our longtime mayor.
Yeah, but Patsy was a really smart girl, And it's just really tragedy that she passed away when she did.
How did you and Patsy become friends? You were a year above her in school.
Yes, one a year above her, she was. I don't know. We just maybe we had a class together. I don't know just how we got to be friends, but yeah, it was really.
Well, many years later, when I was working in television news in Honolulu and got to cover one of Patsy's appearances, I think maybe when she was running for um, state office. Anyway, I introduced myself and told her that you were my mom, and she lit up and she said, she was my first campaign manager. So, so she never forgot that.
Very smart.
And then years later, that wasn't your only political involvement, though. Uh,
Talk.
yes.
Yes, talk much another. The, the, how I got to be involved in Spark campaign was his his wife and Mabel Kobayashi, yeah, uh, the wife of a friend of my husband, were sisters, sisters, and they wanted at that time we used to have campaign speeches, and so they asked me to. I mean, they wrote the stuff, but I was asked to deliver it at it, and that was the year. But before that, when I was grammar school, our the political campaign used to be really an event, and up at Makawa, all the candidates would come, and they would bring food, lots of food, you know, uh, for us, and then of course trying to win the votes, yeah, and so we always used to go to those campaign rallies, campaign rallies. That was fun.
I remember being 5 or 6 years old and going to one of the big Democrat rallies with you, and mom had a Sparky Matsunaga long mu'u. It was white with Sparky's logo, red, white, and blue on the cap. And she had this big, beautiful white straw hat with a spark bumper sticker across it. And oh, I just like I said, my mom was my hero. And then you got up on stage and spoke in front of all those people. People don't. Why did they pick you? Why did they ask you to do the speeches?
What was that?
Because you weren't making a living as an announcer.
Mabel, yeah, was his sister-in-law, and I don't know, she knew me, and I guess she just asked if I would speak, yeah, because the rallies at that time, the candidates would all go to the different voting districts, and they would bring food, and then somebody always, there was always speakers for each candidate.
Because they could be everywhere at once.
That's to ask me.
Well, probably because your public speaking career started when you were seventh grade.
I don't know, but
My mom's really humble, but
I was
you won a big statewide
Oh, that was
contest.
Star Bulletin used to sponsor an oratorical contest. The junior division and the senior division. Junior division was the seventh and eighth grade, and the senior division was the high school. And so that year, when I won the contest for the junior division, uh, Adam Scott, I remember his name, he was from Lahaina Luna, and he won the senior division. And it was the first year that an outer island contestant won any of the either of the
So that's the statewide
yeah
competition.
statewide. And so I was the junior and Adam was the senior. But it was too bad for us because it was the year after that that Starboard and paid the expenses for the winner to go to the national.
This was the Voice of Democracy
uh,
contest, right? Or Voice of,
it wasn't called
Voice of
Voice of
America.
Democracy, it was for the Constitution. Constitution.
But you didn't get to compete in the national.
Mhm.
You didn't get to compete in the
The
national,
no,
at the
we
national.
didn't, because they didn't attend it was the year or two after that they the subaltern paid the expenses and said, yeah.
But it was the first time that Maui swept the state
Yeah,
competition,
the first-
because you
yeah.
both won.
Junior and senior division.
So maybe Spark Matsunaga remembered that and decided you needed to speak on his behalf.
Well, he was a nice man.
My dad used to manage political campaigns, and often you would do the radio commercials, you know. But I remember you telling me from way back, please don't ever run for office.
You have to smile all the time. Even when it kills you, you have to smile.
So, Mom, you and Patsy were in high school in 1940.
Yeah, I graduated from Maui High School in 43, and she was 44. She and Elmer Carvalho were classmates.
So 44. So, the bombing of Pearl Harbor and that wartime.
I was Pearl Harbor was 1940, 41.
41. And you still remember the day that happened.
Oh, yeah. We were I was going to Pokella Church in Makawao, and we always walked up that hill, Olinda hill. We always got there. Well, actually, church wouldn't start until 9 o'clock, but Sunday school would be about 8 o'clock. But we were there already by 7, yeah. And I remember it was Mr. Yoshioka. He was a school teacher, but he also taught the Sunday school. And he drove up and we were playing, and he said, Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. And I remember saying, oh, they wouldn't do that. Because, I mean, my parents, we were Japanese, and I thought, oh, they wouldn't do such a thing.
So you didn't have Sunday school that day.
No, we went home, and then we all were, and then from that day that night, blackout, yeah. So we had to, no lights, and so we put black out our windows with black curtains. And we were all issued gas masks. You know what a gas mask looks like? Oh my God. And we had to carry that with us all day long, even in school. No, yeah, but we, oh, I used to, when I took sandwich from the school lunch, I mean, the home lunch, put it in, there was room in the top, for and other things, other feminine. And then we'd have air raid drill. And if you know Maui High School in Koboko, H-Boko, right across the school was Kingfield. And then the boys had to dig trenches in the field. And then we had a air raid drill. Oh, we would all have to walk down into the trenches, so dirt, But we had those air raid drills about once a month. Oh.
You also had to carry these ID cards, which
Oh, yeah, we were all issued. I still have mine ID card with your name and your birth date, your address, your father's name.
you still carry it,
Yeah.
yeah, because you showed it to me recently.
Yeah.
Pulled it out of her wallet. Your blood type and your fingerprint too, I think.
Huh.
Your fingerprint too.
Yeah,
Your
it was
thumbprint.
a thumbprint.
So you were born and raised in Makawao town, right
The
there.
house
in
is
town.
still there. It's called, there's a sign that says goodies. And they sell uh, dresses and knickknacks. Yeah. But I was born, raised in that house.
You and four siblings and your parents in that tiny little house. And actually, you had an older brother and sister that you never met.
No, they died in a drowning accident in Kokomo. Yeah. But and then when my older sister got married and had children at the city, and her four brothers used to come every weekend and to spend in at Makawa, and they made friends with the children. And I know the older one. And so Monday morning they'd have to go back to Wainuku, and so the kids would go to school. And Henry used to cry. He didn't want to go back to Wainuku.
More fun to stay with Grandma and Grandpa, yeah, in Makawao.
Yeah.
That house, because I've been in Goodies, the shop, and you had said that it hadn't changed at all. It's so tiny.
I know, but it helped.
How did you all, yeah. Did you all sleep in the
stone on the floor?
common room?
Yeah, we called it the parlor.
Parlor. And there was no bathroom, no indoor.
Oh, outside toilet we sit down, what you call the outhouse.
Down in the gully.
Yeah. I didn't mind going down myself, but my sister, Auntie Sata, she would call for me, and if I wasn't around, she'd get, and we had chickens, so, so she'd grab chicken feed and she would call the chickens and she would um, throw the feed so the chickens would follow the feed and keep her company.
So you folks had chickens for eggs
Yeah, eggs and
and meat,
you know,
but there were other chickens that came to the house, right?
oh, that was the uh, the Filipino men, bachelors, used to gamble. They had called chicken fight, and I mean, it doesn't sound good, but they would have these bantam chickens, and they would have two of them fight, and they would we had space in our yard that was big enough for them to draw a ring, and then they put the chickens in there, and then the two chickens would fight. And I don't know, I grew up with it, so it doesn't, uh, affect me that much, but I'm sure others, would say, oh, chicken fight. But I don't think they do it now. But anyway, uh, they used to gamble. Yeah, we say, oh, chicken fight, chicken fight. And,
So your father wasn't raising the band. They only came and used your yard
yeah.
because you probably had the biggest yard.
Yeah.
But I know there was other illegal activity that went on inside the house.
So in the house, Japanese Suda, Japanese cards that men would come in, that they would gamble, yeah.
But also your mother.
Oh, oh,
This was
in
prohibition
the
days.
30s when there was prohibition, and my father always had sake, but he had, the sake, the small sake cup. He always had two before dinner. No more, no less than two sake cups. And so my mother and he wanted the sake warm, and so my mother would put it in a sake bottle and heat it, in warm water. And it was, we, and sometimes I was asked to fill the bottle, and we tried to put just enough so that there was enough for two sake cups for my father. But sometimes we put a little bit more, and she and I can.
Well, where did the sake come from? This was prohibition days.
Oh yeah, my I don't know where my mother learned to make sake, but she did, and you had there was a special kind of rice. You couldn't make sake with the ordinary rice. It was a rice anyway. And Matsui store, they always ordered things from Japan and got takuan and other Japanese food. And they had that rice. And I would go up and my mother would make the sake. And there was this two policemen. One was we called him Billy John. He was a tall black man, and then a Portuguese man. They knew when the sake was ready. They always came at night, or 10 o'clock or whatever. And then my mother would, and it's illegal, right? But and my mother would give them a couple of drinks, fine.
They probably knew when all of the Japanese
the
names
different-
were made.
Yeah. So,
Makawao town, still, some of the buildings are still standing, including your home. But it must have been so different back in those days.
I don't know. The Matsuri store was always there, yeah. Matsuri store and Komodo store was across the street. Matsuri, and then there was Honda barber shop, and there was a Ichiki store. Miss Kachihara ran the Ichiki store, and then there was food hall. A couple of men ran the food table.
And a theater.
Hmm?
And a movie theater.
A movie theater was across the street. Was across the street, and my Miss Miss Crook, she had this big house across the street with a big yard and mangoes, and she owned the theater, and but 5 cents to go see the movie. Well, my mother would give my older sister 5 cents to go see the movie, but she didn't want to pay for me because she thought it should go in free. And so I would go with my sister, and Miss Cook would be in the ticket office, and she would look to see, and she saw us. She would run over, well, hurry over to the ticket collector, Mr. Brown, and she had this umbrella with a hook. And when I would go in, she'd grab me, and I'd have to, I cannot go in free. But I used to kind of try to, go without her seeing. And Mr. Brown was nice; he would let me in.
What kind of movies would you go and sneak in to see?
Oh, there was always one night would be a Filipino movie, and then Japanese movie, and then one would be a cowboy double bill, cowboy B movie, and then one night would be a regular movie, Mhm.
The building where the theater was, I think, is now the gallery.
The what?
That's a art gallery now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right across the street from your home. So was Komoda store making those cream puffs back then?
No, they didn't have people then. They had the bread was good, Kuma bakery and donut, donut. But Komoda's had about four or five boys, and the oldest one, they would be baking, but I think the second or the third one went to the mainland, and he learned to make cream puffs and stuff. They had the best pies too. Azuki pie.
Yeah. They still do, I think. So Makawao town had a lot of Japanese families and Portuguese, but there were only a few Chinese families that pretty much owned
Oh, well, no,
property.
in town, mostly stores, and not the residences. And I think we were the only residence. The others were stores, and then the family would be living in the back of the stores. But there was a fish market, a seafood fish market, and one barber shop, and then Matsuri store that sold things from Japan and Papua and Ume. And then uh, the store that's not, is it still Club Rodeo?
Oh, Casanova.
Casanova, yeah. Okay, that used to be the tank-top store. My classmate, Florence, her uh, store. And they sold cheese, seeds, Chinese seeds, crack seed, whole seed, salt, seed, sweet, sour. And after grammar school, then you have to walk through town to go to Japanese school. And Florence always walk with Florence, and she would always give me, seeds. And they would uh, put it in a little paper sack, the seed, or 5 cents or 10 cents, how much you buy. And then I remember after eating all the seeds, we would turn the bag inside out and lick off all of whatever stuck to the guy, and even um, uh, chewed, chewed the whatever one you could get out of the paper bag.
I remember you telling me what you used to use for instead of chewing gum.
Oh, no. um, didn't have, we didn't have money, to spend on candy and stuff. But the Baldwin Avenue was macadamized, and then when in summer it's hot, you can peel off the top layer, and it's hard, but it's soft. So I would take a little bit and chew on it and not swallow the saliva, but spit out, but it was like gum, you're chewing gum.
So maybe that's one of the secrets to long life.
Maybe that's it,
Chewing tar and bigger bags. When the war broke out and there were suddenly thousands of servicemen.
Boy, the Fourth Marine
Yeah.
Division was in Kokomo. They called it the Marine camp. And they all, they used to come into Makawao town. And the buses, we had the Kauri Railroad bus. And they didn't run that often, but maybe hour on the hour. And so a lot of the Marines would walk from Camp Maui into town Makawao, catch the bus and go down to downtown Wailuku or Kahului.
But you were a high school student at the time. You were a teenage girl.
Yeah.
What was it like for you and your friends to see all these young servicemen?
Well, for me, my mother wouldn't allow me to go, past the seafood fish market and Club Rodeo now. It used to be the USO Club, USO, and the the high school girls were would come in the Saturday and Sunday weekend, and the 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 Marines would be able to dance, yeah, and they had live music and they dance. But my mother said I couldn't go. No, no.
But you eventually met and married a serviceman. So eventually you met and married a serviceman.
Yeah, that was after I went to San Diego. Yeah.
This always amazed me when I was growing up and you and daddy would tell me about how you met. So you both went to Maui High School, but at different times. You're a few years older than dad. He grew up in Haiku, you grew up in Makawao, but you never met.
No, because he was 7 years younger than me.
Oh, yeah. But Maui was such a small island that it just amazed me that you two met in California.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how you got to be in San Francisco? No.
No. Actually, after high school, I was supposed to go to college, but we didn't have the money. And then I started to work at the Yaemi dispensary as what you call it, secretary, because the doctor was allowed to have a private practice plus the company practice. And so I
What was the doctor's name?
I worked for Dr. Anderson, and then they might be dispensary for my pineapple company. Women, and then I took care of the women, and then he left to go back to the mainland and to Glendale, California. And then that's when, after about a year, he called and asked if I would come and bring a friend with me, that if I could help in his office, because the nurse that was his nurse got married, and they were moving away. And then his wife needed someone to help with the 4 girls. And so my friend and I, through Iwaishi, went to Glendale, and we was a very what experience. I mean, it was really nice. The first time we went to the they had July 4th. Did they have a parade? Or no, they had July fireworks in the what the Rose Bowl. He was in the Rose Bowl. And saw the fireworks for the first time.
So you were what, 20? You were in your early 20s.
Yeah.
Yes, that.
And knowing at that time, but when Dr. Anderson gave me, he said his one of his patients, he gave him 2 tickets to go see this show, and it was Michael Jackson. And at that time, Michael Jackson was,
Wait, it couldn't have been Michael Jackson.
but
Not Michael Jackson. That was 24.
Oh, yeah. Was a famous black
Sammy Davis
yeah,
Jr.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, he and he and his father and uncle, or yeah, I think so, or his two uncles. They performed. And we saw them live. Something.
So you were working for Dr. Anderson when my father and his friend showed up. You met in Glendale?
Oh yeah, because we were working for him in Glendale, and your father was on, and his friend were on their way to St. Louis. He was supposed to go to St. Louis and then dental school. And his father gave him $6,000 to cover all the expenses. So what did he do? He and his friend got off at Los Angeles, and his friend brother was met them, and he was a practicing dentist in Glendale or something. Yeah, anyway. So uh, he told him that you're not going to be able to uh, enter dental school with just high school diploma. You know, uh, you have to uh, an A average, yeah, before you can. So anyway, they ended up in staying in Glendale, and then he got sick. Yeah, uh, he got his about sick, and so his friend used to be my Dr. Anderson's patient in Maui. So he brought uh, Nelson to Dr. Anderson, and then they were so Nelson and his friend were living by themselves, and so I said, "Oh, do you want we will fix you a haircut, you know, chicken haircut one night for dinner?" I said, "Oh yeah." And so we used to go and weekends, and then uh, he was either gonna have to go to or they were drafting for the army, and he didn't want to go into the army. He didn't want to go to the Marines, and then the only other thing was the Navy. So he signed up for the Navy, and in San Diego, the Naval Training Center, and he was just lucky that he he signed up to be a dental technician, and so they yeah, entered the Navy, and he became a dental technician, and he also liked sports, and even into wrestling, and he was only he weighed only about 120 pounds or so, and the 14th Naval District, they would have competition with a different anyway,
Different bases.
yeah, within the 14th Naval District. Since my husband was near the our age, yeah, they're all big, yeah, and no more the young, uh, they're small.
Because they have different weight classes.
The weight class, and they, um, so they picked him, and then whenever it was time for my husband to be shipped overseas, yeah, to do his, they need the competition was coming up, so they would keep him. And so he joined the Navy, but he never got to see the sea. It was always in San Diego.
But I remember him telling me he actually wanted to join the Air Force,
Yeah,
but when he went to find the recruiting office, the line was so long,
yeah,
and,
block around the block, and
he never liked waiting in.
he didn't like to do was stand in line. And so the naval, yeah, recruiting officer didn't have a long line, so he went in.
So he
It really worked out so good for him. And he said, then they really took care of their athletes. They had special mess hall, and when they would do their, they'd have to march every day. So when they marched and came up to a puddle, they didn't walk through it; they went around it. The other soldiers would have to walk through the puddle, but not the athletes. And then the special mess hall. Yeah.
Special treat. Um, and so then, after Daddy was completed his term with the Navy, you went to Chicago.
Yeah, because he wanted, because the doctor, Captain Nick, that he worked for, his brother was a graduate of University of Illinois in Chicago. And so he was able to,
In the facility.
actually, you'd have to have a bachelor's degree to enter dental school. She didn't, but Dr. Was able to get him enrolled at the University of Illinois Dental School in Chicago.
And so that's how I ended up being born in Chicago and not Maui.
Hmm?
That's how I ended up being born in.
Yeah,
That's how I ended up being
Kotong.
Kotong. Yeah.
But Chicago is a beautiful city, very interesting, a lot of things, but cold, below zero, and hot in the hundreds, summer. And the apartment we lived in, the livestock, Chicago livestock, was right down the street down, and we could get the smell. Oh, wow.
You also had an apartment above uh,
Drugstore. Drugstore, yeah, was we were right above the drugstore, and the manager of the drugstore lived in one of the apartments above the drugstore, and he had that anyway, if somebody came in, to um,
oh, and an alarm.
Yeah, the alarm go off, right above the safe. Yeah, the safe was right below our bedroom. And, but the alarm would go off and, so the manager could tell you. And, but we didn't know about the safe being right below our bed.
The drugstore got robbed.
Until yeah, one night, yeah. And, the alarm went off and the police were, outside. And I went to the window to see, and the police told me, get away from that window.
Not only did your downstairs neighbor, the drugstore, get robbed, but uh, didn't your car get stolen or broken into? Or
Yeah, one night, the guy, well, we know garage, and we all parked on the road down the street. And, these, robbers went right down the street, took everybody's, battery. That was something.
I figured because you were students, the area of town you lived in was not the high rent district.
No,
Yeah.
no. But it was, right across the, what do you call it? The highway, and you could just walk over to, well, then your father went to, University of Illinois Dental School, yeah, the dental, University of Illinois professional schools are all in Chicago. Nursing, pharmacy, dentistry, medicine, yeah. And then I got a job at the, Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital, which was across the street, so I could walk over. Yeah.
Uh, just like I thought, this hour's going by really quickly. I know we only have a few more minutes, and I wondered, did anybody have questions?
I got a question.
Yes.
Did you have to deal with the internment and the different things that happened after Pearl Harbor? The separating that they did, the isolation?
Cheryl asked if you personally had to, what your experience was like, with internment after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. How did it affect you and your family?
Oh, I guess my, my father, after the bombing, they interned just the, professional, men, physician, dentist, but, my father was not, so we weren't affected that much.
Yeah, not personally. I remember seeing, I remember if it was in Lane Nishikawa's film or one of the other films, but in interviewing the children of people who were interned and Japanese families, and one man saying, my father expected to be taken because they were taking all of the prominent, important men. They didn't come and get him, and he was kind of offended that he wasn't considered important enough. I don't think my grandfather, I don't think that worried him too much.
I have a question. Was Mr. Matsui the only one that was interned from Makawa?
Mr. Matsui from Makawao was interned. Were there others from Makawao that you remember were taken?
Oh, yeah, the, Japanese school, because we had Japanese school, the Japanese school, principal. And, I was, going to high school. My girlfriend's father was, Dr. Ohata. She said, teacher, the police just and the soldiers just came and no explanation, nothing, just practically grabbed the father and said, "We're going." And, and they took him. And she said they never heard from him. And then when when the war ended, then he was released to come back to Maui. But by that time, the father was decided, no, he'll just go to Japan. He didn't come home.
The families, I remember my mom telling us that many of the Japanese families were terrified and either burned or buried a lot of their personal items, scrolls and things like that. All of the families had shrines in their homes, yeah, but her father refused. He didn't. So mom still has his chest with items like that, you know, his calligraphy sets and things like that.
Yeah, the altar, the Japanese Buddhist altar. My father thought, no, they're not gonna, they're not gonna do anything. So he kept.
And they didn't. Are we out of time already?
Unfortunately.
Oh. Well, thank you so much, Mom, for what you got. One quick.
My father had a Model T, and we would, then my older sister, Betty's mom, they lived in Kiheo Camp 5 anyway. Every weekend, and my mother had rheumatoid arthritis. And so we would go down to visit my niece, and then coming back up Galani Highway with his Model T, with slow, and all these other cars are passing him. And my father's going, son of a bitch, son of a bitch.
He didn't speak much English, but
Cursing the cars were passing him. Or cursing his trucks were not going fast anyway. Son of a bitch.
1930s, 40s road rage.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us via Zoom. Thanks to the folks who came in person, and mostly thanks, Mom, for being my guest. Thank you to Mel and Deidre and all of the folks at the State Veterans Memorial Center. The next Yakamashii is August 6th.
Yes,
Remember that. That's my granddaughter's birthday, as well as other significant dates via Zoom. And so you can register for that at nvmc.org. My special guest, I'm really excited about this because I met him years ago and we have a lot in common, and I know he's got a bunch of really fun stories to tell. Lee Tonouchi, who is fondly known as the Pigeon Gorilla. He is an author, a poet, a playwright, and a teacher, and a really good, fun local voice. So please join us for that, August 6th, our next Yakamashii. Thank you all so much for being here.